never done it.
Here we are. Happy Friday, everyone. First of all, the sun is out. The sun is usually out on Fridays when I do this. So I'm happy about that. Anyway, I am really excited because I have Patrick Healy with me from Citywide Title. And we're going to talk about what is title? I mean, what the heck are we paying for? So welcome, Patrick.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Should I just take it away?
Yes, just tell me what title is. I mean, everybody's like, wait, what? I got to pay all these fees? What is this for? I mean, they get the taxes. They get that, they got $200 for this tax and that. But what are these title fees?
Sure. So I'll start off. I've been with Citywide for 13 years now, which is kind of nuts. Definitely didn't graduate college and be like, let's try this title insurance thing. But here we are. It's been a wild ride. I started in 2010, which, if you know, I mean, that was all short sales and REOs and crazy stuff. And I mean, we could probably start right there, because going through REOs and stuff, they you would definitely want to get title insurance when you're going through all those processes. So what the heck is title insurance? So the way I generally explain it is it works the opposite of your normal understanding of insurance. And what I mean by that is normal insurance, your car insurance, house insurance, life insurance, is insuring events in the future. You get in a future car accident, you pass away, your house there's a fire, whatever it is. What title insurance is doing is insuring the past. So
good.
Your home is more than likely, it may be new construction, it may not be. But even when it's new construction, there was a previous owner of that lot. Somebody owned that land before you. And so what title insurance is doing is it's saying, if anything comes up from the past, if there are past owners, if there's a past tax bill, if there is anything that pops up while you own it that was from the previous owners, or could be 100 years ago, which is highly unlikely, but it could be, we're insuring that so that it takes the liability off your plate. So here's a good example of it. And I'm going to use my uncle.
Okay.
So this is a fun story. So my uncle bought in Old Town in Chicago, right around like Wells and North Avenue, if anyone knows where that is. And this is years ago in the 90s when it was basically still Cabrini Green. And it was just starting to gentrify. So he got really lucky. That area turned around and he's got a ton of equity and all that. But he bought it out of new construction. And he doesn't know real estate, much like most consumers out there. Like, what the heck? I don't know. I don't know this process. I've done it twice in my life, and it was 10 years ago. Who knows? So he had purchased it, and years and years later, 16 years later, he pays his own bill. He doesn't escrow. He pays his own tax bill. So he got his tax bill in the mail, and there was an open item on that. This is in Cook County, obviously. And he didn't think much of it and went down to pay the tax bill. And it was $16,000. And his mind almost like blew up.
Right.
So we were going through the process quite a bit with him and finding out what the heck happened. And it finally clicked with him that he was buying new construction and he got some money back from all the money he put into buying it, with earnest money and down payments, all this stuff. He was just like, I don't know, I got a check back. Well, it turns out that he was supposed to pay his first installment bill with that check. And I don't know what he did with it, but he didn't pay the tax bill. It wasn't malicious. He wasn't being negligent or anything like that. He just didn't know. Cook County had missed it for years and years, didn't bring it up. And 16 years later, it was $16,000 with fees and interest and all that sort of stuff. Now, he still lived in that property. Had he owned it, had he sold it to a new buyer and they got that tax bill, they'd be paying it. Other things come up. You do things in trust. Well, okay. A lot of times the documents that we collect for trust paperwork is an affidavit of heirship, meaning that the seller passed away. And an affidavit of heirship proves all the heirs that are owed property or ownership of the property or money or whatever. So you have this affidavit of all the kids and nephews, wives, whatever. We get a death certificate that they prove they passed away. Some people, not all, don't get along with all their siblings. And that affidavit of heirship might be missing somebody.
Mm.
Well, what the heck? We close on the property, and all of a sudden that heir comes out of the woodwork and says, "You guys sold the property and all took $100,000. Where's mine?"
Right.
Well, it's an issue. So, title insurance, the owner's policy, and I don't know how detailed we want to get. An owner's policy is given to the new buyer to protect them against anything from the past.
So if somebody comes up and says, well, I own, I'm one of those heirs that was never discovered, the new buyer is not responsible if they've been assured that they have clear title from Citywide Title. Becomes
right.
Citywide's problem.
That's right. So you have an owner's policy that goes to that buyer to protect them. And I mean, things don't get recorded. It doesn't happen very often these days, but it does happen where a quit claim was done, but it wasn't recorded. Or an actual deed was done, but it wasn't recorded. And we don't see it on the sites or anything like that. These things happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not mandatory that you get an owner's policy, but I wouldn't buy without one for sure.
And then, so explain how the fees work. So if you're selling your house, you're paying, what are the fees for a seller versus what are the fees for the buyer?
Sure. So generally speaking, if you're a seller, you are paying for an owner's policy. You pay for, it depends on the title company too. Some people charge differently or call it different things, but you'll see sometimes a search fee on there.
Okay.
You'll see update fees. And then you'll start to see CPL fees, or that's like the underwriter for title insurance. The state of Illinois gets $3 every time you sell a property. And in that on a title invoice, you'll generally see your tax stuff, your tax prorations. So the owner's policy is the biggest part. It usually starts around $2,000, and that's for the seller's fees.
Okay.
You might also see transfer stamps and stuff depending on your municipality for the seller to pay, which are becoming more and more common, and I believe more and more expensive, like everything else these days.
And those are communities. The transfer stamps go by the city. So
that's correct.
Highland Park has them, Lake Forest has them, not every village, and they range in what they are.
Yes. So depending on your municipality, like Chicago hits the buyer and the seller, but not all municipalities do that. Some people just charge the buyer. Sometimes there is no transfer tax at all. But my guess is that most municipalities are wanting that revenue these days. So if they don't have it, they'll probably find one soon.
Yeah.
And then on the buyer side, the buyer, especially if they have a lender, is going to have a couple of different fees. So there's going to be a closing fee that the buyer pays out of their pocket. The entire closing fee is probably between $1,500 and $2,000 on average. However, if it's a cash deal, the buyer and the seller split that fee, that closing fee.
Wow.
So take that for what it's worth.
So wait a minute. Are you telling me that if a seller sells for cash, he actually has an additional fee?
Yes. It's in the contract. It's in the 7 point, what are we on now? 7.1,
Okay.
7.0.
Okay.
It's right in there. Yeah. So if they pay for cash.
I mean, it's a nominal fee, but it's still.
Yeah. I mean, it'd probably be, depending on the size of the deal, $700, $800, $900.
Yeah. Okay.
You'll see, if there's a lender, you'll see a lender's policy. And actually, I got a good story about a lender's policy in a second. The lender will require some endorsements to the title insurance policy as well.
Okay.
And you might see the lender requires a chain of title. So you see a chain of title fee, commitment update fee, and then some miscellaneous stuff, which isn't quite. You'll see your transfer taxes and stuff like that as well, tax credits. So I get asked quite a bit, actually, because the lender's policy runs about $575 to the buyer. And people say, well, what the heck does a lender need a lender's policy for? And this is a fun one. So um, in we closed a file. It was right at the beginning of COVID or so in Berwyn. And Berwyn does have some inspection items in order for you to get your transfer stamp. And you can't transfer the ownership of the property into the new buyer's name without that transfer stamp.
Okay.
So we had a couple of attorneys, I think it was in our Oak Lawn office, or maybe Oak Brook, I can't remember. And they were closing. It was one of our sellers' attorney, very good attorney, and does business with us. And we have a decent amount of rapport and trust with them. And we said, hey, are all the inspections for the city of Berwyn passed? And he said, yeah, no problem. So we just took him at his word and said, okay, great, closed the deal. We funded it and went to get the transfer stamp in Berwyn, just to have Berwyn tell us that we didn't pass the inspection. So now we didn't pass the inspection on this property, so we can't transfer this property over to the new buyer's name. And then it just kept getting worse from there. Actually, the seller happened to be a investor who just flipped the property, and he already had his proceeds. So he could have just walked away, filed BK on that LLC and gone away. And of course, the inspection that didn't pass was the sewer inspection. So they didn't do that sewer inspection, and of course they failed it. So we look at the sewer, or I didn't, but somebody did, and the problem happened between the street and the house. So now you got to dig up all that stuff, sidewalk, find where the leak is, replace it. This is a pretty expensive problem.
Yeah.
Not to mention, we can't put this house into the new buyer's name, so the lender isn't in first lien position now. So the lender on the lender's policy could have said, hey, what the heck is going on? We want to be in first lien position. And they could have filed to get either paid off, or it would have been a mess. And I think it was like a $360,000 property.
Wow. Well, can I ask a question? Don't you usually have to come to the closing with those stamps?
So you can do it. We changed our policy. Again, that was a really good attorney,
Learning.
good source, and it was a oversight. But actually, in a lot of situations, we can go and get those transfer stamps post close.
Okay. Yeah. Because most of them that I do, we come to the table with those.
We appreciate that. So what will happen in certain municipalities, and it's not so much in the northern suburbs, some in the south suburbs, you get like Cal City, Berwyn, Cicero, and they require a little bit more on their closings for their inspection. So what we'll do in their paperwork and stuff, so what we'll do is we'll get that property right to closing. Okay. And we'll have somebody run down to that municipality and just say, here's all the paperwork, here's your deed. We'll get the transfer stamp. Once we have that stamp in hand, then we'll fund the file and disperse everything. So it takes it's a little more work for us, but a little bit less work for our clients. So we're okay with that. And you don't necessarily have to have them before closing, but if you want it all wrapped up in a neat little bow and dispersed, it'd be great.
Yeah. And I've done that, with the attorneys I work with. Michelle Golden, Mages and Price, and Sarah. We get them, and they've said, okay, Betsy, run over there, get the stamps before we. So I'm happy to volunteer to do that. And
well done. We'll put you on we'll put you on the courier list. We'll have you running all over the place.
I'm on the courier list. We want wonderful, smooth closings. So.
Yeah, I'm sure your days of currying are over, Betsy, but
no. I bought Polygrip for one of my clients. I do a lot of senior moves, and he needed it. I'm happy to stop at Target and pick it up.
Going above and beyond every time.
Yeah. Yes.
So those are two of the biggest fees that you're going to see is probably your owner's policy and your lender's policy and the closing fee. You can get into endorsements. Most lenders are going to require 2 endorsements, the Alt 9 location, the comprehensive. We don't have to get into what they are. The lender wants it. If you want their money, you got to get it. So you'll see those on
basically to protect the buyer and the seller from anything that could have gone before on that property.
Yes, and the lender protects the lender, and I guess the buyer and
Right. And
by
the
way,
seller, that you're not going to come back to them with
yeah,
anything. So
yeah,
you're sort of the go-between, and the title company also does all the financial transfers.
yes, yes,
You are the people that, so we don't have escrow in Illinois. Um, you guys are the ones that bring everybody's money together and make
disperse it.
sure that the property is transferred and that the money is good and everything is funded. It's not just some human being fooling
Yeah,
around with this.
that's
There are
right.
regulations so that it's safe.
That's right. It gets way more complex when you start dealing with LLCs, and is it a single member LLC? Are there managers and all that sort of stuff? Um,
Right.
and we want to make sure that everyone that's owed money gets their money, and everyone that doesn't deserve money, they don't get it. It's not.
Right.
Um,
Right.
there are a lot of rules. There's a lot of regulation, a lot of laws. We work with attorneys all day, so we want to be doing things by the book.
Right. And I would say the closers, which you call the closers, they are the most detail oriented humans on the planet. I guess
Yeah,
next to actuaries, maybe.
yeah.
An I does not go
Undotted.
undotted. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have special training for that? I mean, how do you know what people are so? I mean,
Yeah.
anybody can make a human error, but it seems like they don't.
Well, they do. And then we
But they're
just have people.
trained. They must be trained to look for certain things.
Sure. So we generally, at our company at least, we don't hire a ton of people from outside. We do a lot of internal development. And so we have had some closers from other companies come over, but generally we'll start people out with refinance closings because
Mm-hmm.
it's just the lender. There's no seller. You're just
Right.
redoing your loan, and they kind of get an idea of what they're looking for on the buy side. And then we start introducing the seller stuff to them. And we do have oversight. And sometimes we have a newer closer, there'll be a manager watching over them. I'm actually kind of doing it with them as they learn.
Right.
And there's a
That's
lot.
good.
You could
That's
spend 10 years doing this and still not know everything. There's a lot.
That's
A
good.
lot.
Yeah. And that's what people don't realize as well. You know, these fees seem high, but there's a lot of support behind all of this and people that need to get paid to do all of this work to assure that you have clean title and that the money is good and it transfers properly, and that when you walk out of that sale and that closing, you can sleep at night. Everything's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, that's actually a good segue for kind of where title insurance is going. Because I don't disagree with you, Betsy. This is not the opinion of Citywide Title. It's just a personal opinion that I think title fees are pretty expensive these days, and I think something's probably going to change in that regard, whether it's regulation or I don't know, but it's since I've started, it seems to go up every year, and
Yeah.
it's like, golly.
Yeah. And people aren't expecting that, but I tell people it doesn't matter what you do, you got to pay that in the state of Illinois. You're not, I mean, maybe you don't if you don't want to have clear title. I mean, I don't know, but
Yeah, you don't have to have title insurance. You don't, but man, what a risk that would be.
that's huge,
You
right?
know, in a
Right.
lender, you're not going to get away with it. If you want their money, they're going to want those
Right.
policies, and that's part of the deal. So as the future starts coming down really quickly here, it gets faster every year. Where it's like now we have AI and all this stuff,
Yeah.
and
It'll be
probably within
interesting.
the next year or so, they'll start probably having remote online notaries, which we're supposed to already have, but we don't. Where you're just going to be clicking some buttons. There'll be somebody on a platform looking at IDs, and they're just going to stamp it, and it's going to speed up your closings quite a bit. The technology is not going anywhere for the time being. It's just going to get more and more in our
It's just
lives.
going to get more and more remote and online, and we all have to move along with it.
That's
Well,
right.
Patrick, I want to thank you. This has been super informative, and please know that I'm sure you can reach out to Patrick if you have a question. You don't want to get involved with your agent or your attorney. You want to just have an unbiased answer to your question. And I want to wish everybody a really happy weekend.
Yeah,
Stay
have a
safe
great
out
weekend,
there.
guys.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Patrick. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.